Hello and welcome to Seattle City Makers. I'm your host, Jon Scholes. Well, hello everybody. I hope these later weeks of winter are treating you well. The days are getting longer. That extra daylight at the end of the day is certainly nice. We've made it through the toughest patch and spring is not too far out in the distance. Well, welcome to our latest episode where I have the honor of hosting a conversation with Seattle City Council member Andrew Lewis. Councilmember Lewis is, I think, the first elected official we've had on Seattle City Makers. We've had a couple of appointed officials in two police chiefs, Carmen Best and our current police chief, Adrian Diaz, and a few other appointed officials. But Councilmember Lewis represents our first elected official to join us on Seattle City Makers, and we were glad to have him. Andrew represents District 7, which includes downtown and Queen Anne and up to Magnolia. And he is finishing out his first term on the city council, was first elected in 2019, is up for re-election this coming November, recently announced his plans to seek re-election earlier this year. Prior to serving on the city council, Councilmember Lewis was an assistant city attorney for the city of Seattle. He is a Seattleite, a fifth-generation Seattleite, born and raised here, going through Seattle public schools, got his degree from the University of Washington and a degree from the London School of Economics as well. And Councilmember Lewis and I talk about his first term, his plans for re-election, the current political landscape in our city where we have 7 of 9 city council members, including Councilmember Lewis, facing re-election this coming November. A number have announced they will not seek re-election. So Councilmember Lewis currently, I think, is in the minority of his colleagues in seeking re-election. We get his take on the issues facing our city, what he's hearing from voters, some of his areas of focus in his first term, and what he hopes to accomplish as he seeks re-election. Hope you enjoy my conversation with District 7 City Council member Andrew Lewis.
Hey, Jon. How are you? Good to see you. It's good. You guys got the best equipment here for this. Look at this.
Yeah, we upgraded kind of early on, and there was a big noticeable difference in quality.
Huge difference.
Well, thanks for doing this with us. We kind of just jump right in. So this is us jumping right in.
Let's do it.
And first off, congrats on your new baby to you and Laura.
Yeah, 9 weeks and 4 days.
Yeah, how's it going?
Anyone's counting.
How's it going?
Single day.
Being a new father.
It's going great. It's the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
but it's going great.
Yeah.
The 2 coffees, as you can see. Listeners don't have a visual component, but I have 2 coffees on the desk.
And the water. You're going to be well.
And the water, yeah.
Yeah. Well caffeinated, well hydrated. But it's going well.
It is. Yeah. It's going really well.
Good.
Yeah, she's doing great. Mom's doing great.
Yeah. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And are the cats getting less attention?
No, the cats have figured out that in some respects they get more attention if they kind of cuddle up next to the baby because then it's really cute and mom takes lots of pictures of them. So they're milking it for everything it's worth too.
You have social cats. I mean, most cats, I guess, don't really want attention. They're just like, leave me alone, right? But
yeah, these cats, we have very political cats.
I saw that. Household. Maggie and Scoop, right?
Yeah, and their names, as their names would imply.
Yeah.
Yeah, so political nerd listeners will know those are our former illustrious United States senators. Great cat names.
Yeah.
Scoop and Maggie.
They are good cat names and great senators. Mm-hmm. So you also recently helped give birth to your own podcast. We should plug that. All Policy is Local. Are you having fun with that?
It's really great. Yeah, I was actually just talking to Nick on your team here before about it, and a lot of our topics have really bled into downtown-related topics, which I've really appreciated.
You've had great guests.
And it's a great opportunity to really provide a longer-form communication to dive into some of these problems we're facing. And it's hard with a 30-second soundbite on TV or, on the other end, a really, really long policy position paper to get some of this across. And I find the podcast medium of an easy-to-listen 30-minute deeper dive is a good medium. As your podcast has shown, to really get into some of these issues and inspire community folks to get involved in things. We've gotten a lot of great feedback from some of our podcast episodes where people have gone and, engaged with Dominic Davis or, read Professor Colburn's book or really looked into some of the research and development that the University of Washington is doing in a way they didn't realize before because the podcast stimulated that interest. So it's great. And it's easy for us to do. It's a very low resource activity. We're just having a conversation and we happen to be recording it. And it's been a really great experience.
Yeah, you've done a great job and great guests and great issues. And I agree. I really I love the format. I mean, you can get to the nuance and complexity of these very complicated issues that you and others are trying to make a difference on. And you're doing these weekly, I see. Have you committed to that schedule? I mean,
now we tend to we might record like 5 of them in one week and then put them out over the course of several months, right? But yeah, we're trying to do it weekly, and at least for the next 3 weeks, we'll probably still be doing it weekly. But listeners, don't be disappointed if it becomes a bi-monthly podcast in short order or something like that.
You've got a campaign and a baby. You've got good excuses to maybe deviate a little bit from that schedule.
Yeah, there might be a couple best of re-releases coming up soon in the All Policy is Local podcast.
Yeah, well, I feel like Seattle City Makers has some good competition with what you're doing out there. So we're going to have to keep our game up over here, James, and keep our cadence. But plenty of room.
Yeah.
In the podcast space. So a number of your colleagues have decided not to run for re-election and to not continue their career on the city council. You've recently announced you are running again. Tell us why.
Yeah. So, I feel like, and we can talk about some of the things we've been working on, but there's a lot of things that in 4 years are still only half done. And there's a lot of work that's left out there to do. And, I don't want to leave some of these projects hanging out there. I'd really like to advance, for example, a lot of the stuff we're doing on 3rd Avenue with 3rd Avenue Vision. I'd really like to solve a lot of the fundamental problems around public safety downtown, to hold criminals accountable, but also to provide help for people who are in significant public health distress. And we're getting close on a lot of those things, and we have a real partnership with Mayor Harrell that is energetic, that is sincere, that is aligned on mission and values. And for those reasons, look, if those things didn't exist, if I didn't have a great partner in the Downtown Seattle Association or We Deliver Care, Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Program, and Mayor Harrell, like if all those institutions weren't on the ground, ready to be good civic partners, I might not run again. If there wasn't a prospect of getting stuff done in the next 4 years, I got other ways I could spend my time.
Yeah. Well, you're encouraged and optimistic about
very much so
the path ahead for the city.
Well, we have people in the right places right now who want to do things and get things done.
Yeah.
And, that hasn't always been the case. And I think it'll be a productive, I think this will be a productive year. And I think the next 4 years will be very productive. And we can really have some visionary changes to a lot of the problems we're facing and overcome them. They're really not that daunting problems if you really take a step back and are willing to do the work. I mean, it's going to be a big lift, but I don't think what to do is terribly unclear. I think it's more of a matter of organizing the work and having the right teams in place to execute and implement. And we have the makings of that right now. And I want to help shape that. I want to be a part of it. And I don't want to leave a lot of these things half-baked. Like, let's get it done.
Yeah. Is this job what you expected when you originally ran? I mean, I know you couldn't have predicted or expected a global pandemic and the racial reckoning that this community and country has faced over the last couple of years, but the job itself, is it kind of what you expected? I mean, you worked in city government and the city attorney's office. You had good vantage point, but what's what you expected? What's different from when you first thought about running?
Well, it's been a completely unprecedented time that you can't really compare to any other period of service on the city council. I interned for Sally Clark when she was still on the council, and that was a pretty conventional experience from what I can gather on what the council up until the pandemic was like. But obviously, even just the fundamentals of the mechanics of the job have been different. I've spent most of my council service on Zoom instead of on the council dais. That's slowly coming back, which is good. I'd like us to be back in person more. My office has been physically back for over a year now in the office in terms of myself and personnel, but the meetings, as you know, are still hybrid or largely remote. So just even starting with that component, that's been completely different. And I think our democracy suffers when it's not a more in-person experience. I think that that distance between the computer screen and your colleagues, does lead to a worse interpersonal environment in a legislative body. So I would like to see that diminished.
Imagine there's a lot less communication between you and your colleagues than there would be if you were all on the second floor and bumping into each other. And you feel that?
Well, and not just with colleagues. I mean, I was reflecting to someone the other day that, especially for the first 2 years of the council service, it was frustrating because I was only talking to people if I was seeking the person out or if they in turn were seeking me out. And you don't have all of the collaborations and impromptu conversations that are inherent in coming downtown every day and not just bumping into your colleagues, but bumping into community members. I mean, I'm sure, Jon, you remember the dynamism of what the food court in the Columbia Center was like before the pandemic. I mean, you would run into everybody there.
You get a lot done there.
Yeah, you'd get a lot done there.
Lunch.
You could get a bunch of impromptu things done with someone at the county council member that you want to talk to is there, right? Or a community member at a law firm downtown or whatever it is. Like, you could be like, oh yeah, no, I really wanted to check in with this person on, what we're doing with tax increment financing, or whatever is going on. And when you have an environment where you're just kind of sitting at home because the world is shut down, and you're only really talking to people if you're thinking to reach out to them. I mean, you miss out on all of these random collaborations you could be having that are moving things forward, and it's stifling to creativity and new visions. People get hardened in their positions if their ideas aren't challenged, and it's hard to challenge people's ideas and have your own ideas and perceptions challenged if you can't have a dialogue. And you have the opportunity, in a lot of sense, to be candid, to duck hard conversations. You have a perfect excuse
to isolate.
You'd be like, "Oh, there's COVID. We can't talk. I'm sorry. We can't have this conversation." And I'm glad that that's changing, and we're coming out of that, and we can have a more dynamic discussion, because it's our institutions have eroded considerably from this lack of engagement and this lack of innovation, and I think that's going to change as we come back. And look, to plug the neighborhood that we're in. It's what downtowns are all about. Right. It's all about coming together and having those kinds of creative, dynamic conversations. And I think we talk a lot about how the erosion downtown from the increase of remote work and everything else has had a big economic impact, but it's had a big civic impact too, in our ability to dynamically and creatively come together and discuss problems and move forward in innovative ways. I don't think that gets enough attention in the public conversation. There's this, going back millennia, right? I mean, the city is a place that you use to advance civic discourse and evolve the strength of your community and its institutions, and we haven't had a chance to do that.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective. Yeah, democracy wasn't designed to be done on Zoom, right? I mean, the importance of personal relationships to the functioning of government, right? That's pretty critical. We'll keep our eye on the food court at the Columbia Center as kind of a key indicator of downtown's continued revitalization.
Yeah, do you guys have an app to measure that?
We should. It should be on the recovery dashboard.
The random run-in app.
Yeah.
The random collaboration in the lobby app.
But yeah, I think a lot of people forget what they miss if they haven't been around it, long enough. But yeah, there's environments like that where you have these spontaneous connections and bumping into one another that it's like, oh yeah, that used to be valuable. And that doesn't happen virtually on Zoom, right?
And it's hard to quantify. And as a result, it gets short shrift.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So you are running for re-election, you announced recently. And there was a story in the Seattle Times, I don't know, a week or so ago on some of the reasons and decisions of your colleagues not to run. And a lot of it was, at least in that piece, was sort of pegged to kind of just a toxic environment generally of being an elected official in the city and some of the things that your colleagues have had to deal with over the last few years. What have you had to deal with that maybe was aligned with some of what was reported and by your colleagues and in that piece? I mean, do you think that was a fair kind of characterization of what elected officials locally have been putting up with?
Sure, and I would say at the beginning, I mean, I've certainly had my share of vitriol to deal with, but I can't compare it in equivalency with some of the things my colleagues have experienced. I never experienced the level of vitriol, vandalism, and harassment that Deborah experienced and has talked publicly about. Yeah. Never had a brick thrown through my window like Councilmember Herbold. And never had the kind of, the throwing of human feces on the lawn that Councilmember Swan has been dealing with. So I want to premise at the beginning, I don't want any listener to think there's any equivalent of what I've had to experience relative to what some of my colleagues have had to experience. I mean, there's certainly have been things. I mean, there was one point during the pandemic, and we don't need to get into it too much, where my wife was really offensively doxxed, now wife, then girlfriend, was very offensively doxxed by some people on social media, which I think going after family members in politics is an incredibly gross thing for people to do. It was incredibly invasive. It was extremely offensive and misogynistic. And, that is tragically a hazard that people in public service it's fair game apparently, and it shouldn't be. And we need to condemn those kinds of tactics and make it clear that it's not acceptable political discourse. Yeah. What my hope is that some of it is just kind of related to the general unease and angst of the pandemic, that there might be a little bit of an autocorrection, or some of it, it is a boomlet of the kind of politics that Donald Trump ushered in 2016. And, that invited, tactical responses from the left that while certainly not echoing necessarily the same kind of tactics of Trumpist political discourse, definitely there's been a sort of an overall kind of call and response of a general degrading of the quality of our discourse. And, I got to think that, especially after seeing a pretty dignified State of the Union from the president this week, that nationally there might be a bit of a reset too, back towards a sort of pre-2016 type of political discourse there as well. Because it's not, one thing I would maybe take issue with is this isn't, strictly speaking, a Seattle City Council problem. No. Elected officials at all levels of government are experiencing these really personal, really unacceptable threats and attacks in both parties, not just Democrats, although, it's certainly, the stuff that Congresswoman Jayapal has gone on the record about is incredibly scary and concerning, relating death threats and everything else, and people with guns stalking her outside of her house. So it happens at all levels of government, and it's something that we need to really have the courage to make clear is unacceptable, and to come together in good faith to discuss our ideas and move forward on some of these problems we face as a community, which really should be what we're doing. Yeah. And sometimes I think we get lost in the weeds, and we get in these bitter personal fights, but meanwhile people are still suffering in the street, and we're not advancing any material advance for our community. Yeah.
Well, I hope you are right that we're moving past some of that, and maybe the most recent national election was in some ways a victory for normal and a rejection of some of that on all sides, but shouldn't be a part of what people sign up for when they sign up for public service. That's for sure.
It's going to start having an impact on people deciding to do different things with their lives than serve in elected office.
Yeah.
And, at all levels, not just locally, but in the federal government or the state government as well.
Well, when we talk about, length of service and terms and term limits and all of that, and, our challenge here to some degree in Seattle is just longevity of service. And we haven't had a 2-term mayor for, 15 years or so. And we've got a number of 1-term council members over the last few cycles. And there's something to be said for some longevity here, particularly given the set of issues and how complicated they are, right?
Yeah, I think that the city historically has kind of suffered from having a reputation for not really being a place where you can seek advancement to higher office.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's unfortunate because my personal calling to public service is more project-based. I've been talking to journalists recently about why are you running again? And I'm like, well, I really want to finish this Third Avenue Vision stuff we're doing. I really want to finish some of this, response alternative for low acuity or public health-based things. And they're like, oh, but, city council members don't go on to anything. They don't advance to higher office. And I'm like, well, I want to finish these projects. And then when these projects are done, I'll move on. Mm-hmm. I like the issues, right? I like the, I like what the city does. I like the issues the city has power over. But to your point, I think that we historically haven't retained people in city office because they don't see it as a stepping stone to a higher office. And if your motivation is really to serve in the Congress or some statewide elected office, I can see how the city council would be holding you back. Mm-hmm. But I'm here because I have a commitment to the civic, that I always have for my entire life, a commitment to the work of making an urban, livable city. And I guess my call to action would be on this if, for community members who really want to make an impact on some of those key practical things that you experience every day around our built environment, around public safety. Don't be worried that you won't be able to advance to higher political office. It is a great job. It can be a great job. I think it'll be a better job if we attract people where their core fundamental interest is the nuts and bolts of what we do as a city. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping maybe this election can be a transition period with so much opportunity, so many open seats, to really attract a council like that is really intensely focused on this and ambitious to serve and build a city instead of ambitious to advance
right.
To higher office.
To the next gig. I imagine some of those folks that are thinking about running or for the first time or that have thrown their hats officially into the ring or are seeking your counsel or soon will, what advice would you have for candidates that are thinking about or are running for Seattle City Council positions this cycle?
So the general advice I've given as people have approached me who are looking at the open seats is definitely develop a thick skin and a lot of patience for what you're going to have to go deal with. And to really meet people where they're at. People are going to be angry. People are angry with me. I go out in the community. I have lots of tough conversations. Mm-hmm. I mean, you do too. We were at a tough conversation recently downtown on homelessness, and you were on the panel. I was just in the audience. But there's some people who they want answers because they're rightly frustrated about progress. And I think it starts with really being in a position to patiently listen, to not take it personally, and to really challenge people to come together to focus on how we can all be part of the solution together. And,
mm-hmm.
and I think we have the local leadership to do that. I would also very strongly encourage people who are thinking about this opportunity and have encouraged them to really sit down and think hard about your core motivation. I mean, that sort of goes back to what we talked about before. Mm-hmm. And sort of the exercise to think about would be, what is the committee you would want to chair if you were on the council? And sometimes that throws people for a loop, right? Because it is forcing them to really think like, oh gosh, I'm going to be on the board of directors for a big, important city. I'm going to have to carve off an area of specialization. So let's look at the budget. What am I really interested in, right? Do I want to chair public utilities? Do I want to do public safety? But, really look and engage with, because I do think this will be an election where the general theme of the election is going to be back to basics. Mm-hmm. The general theme of the election is going to be fundamental services. Why isn't the garbage getting picked up? Why can't I get, a police response or some other responder to resolve mm-hmm. whatever my issue is? why are there community members, screaming in the street without a shirt on, and why can't we humanely do something to cater to helping get them into a better situation.
Right.
I would encourage people to really be thinking in those terms and not at kind of broader levels of abstraction, which I think for the last decade has dominated a lot of our thinking about what the role of the city council should be, and in some cases who we have chosen to serve on the council, where there's been more interest about non-binding resolutions on international matters of high importance, ones that it's unclear that us weighing in is going to materially improve the situation. But we have a lot of power over what happens within our borders, and I'm hoping we have colleagues who think of themselves as part of a very efficient and effective team to deal with those issues and to deal with them in an impactful way where the public has confidence that their council is listening and cares about dealing with those very, very practical things key to our livability.
So more policy, less politics.
Yeah, or more policy, less posturing.
Less posturing.
That might be a good way to put it. We want a council that is practical and progressive at the same time. We can do that. We can definitely do that.
Do you think the set of issues and the political dynamics of this upcoming election cycle are going to be pretty close to the last election cycle where we elected a new mayor, a new at-large council member, a new city attorney? Do you think the field is kind of generally set up in a similar way politically?
The polling seems to indicate people find the same issues to be compelling, right? I mean, and rightly so. Look, I mean, the polls are shaped by people's daily experience. The polls are shaped by people seeing people living in tent encampments and the cognitive dissonance of being in such a wealthy society and just not understanding why we can't do something to help get that person into a better situation, be it permanent housing, be it a tiny house, whatever it is. There's just this great frustration over the inability to execute, and that the city, and a perception, I think, that the city is very calcified, that it's overly bureaucratic, that every time people try to engage with the city, things get mired down and I'm an avid Find It, Fix It app user myself.
Right.
And I will kind of use it almost as like an audit on the city departments I oversee. And I get, I tell constituents all the time, I get Find It, Fix It tickets back too that say something's been cleared and they haven't been. And then I go look into it and say, well, look, I'm not just your average Find It, Fix It user. I'm a council member. This thing is not, I'm still down there and this thing is not resolved. And you said it is. So what's going on? Those things really wear on people, and I think they still are. I mean, we've seen right track, wrong track recover to a great extent in the last year, because I think people
aren't as frustrated, but they're not.
One thing that is new for this election cycle, and we'll see how it plays out, is I do think, and I hear it from people, that there is a perception that the council and the mayor are working together in good faith to try to solve these problems. And that is a new thing that was not evident last time. Last time that there was this hopeless feeling of, not only is the city on fire, but our officials, the metaphorical fire brigade, have the hose in a knot and they can't even undo it, and they can't work
hose
together.
is aimed at each other while the fire's burning behind them. Right?
Or half the fire brigade doesn't think the house is on fire. Whatever analogy you want to use.
Bickering and dysfunction.
Yeah. And there was this dysfunction was an issue that was on the ballot, basically, right? And I don't think that's the case anymore. I think we've moved toward there is still this great people think their city leaders are working in good faith to solve the problem, but they're impatient at the slow speed at which it's going. And that's an impatience and frustration that I share. But I do also think 2023, I can't really say a ton on the record here, but from my conversations with the mayor's team, I think we're in a place where there is going to be a lot of action in 2023. And if 2022 was sort of setting up the conditions to implement some of those, 2023 will be a bigger year of action. And I think that will resonate, and the vibe in the winter and spring of 2023 might be different than what it is in the fall. By the time we get to the fall, people might think the city's in a better place. That might reflect in what their political preferences are going to be. And and we'll see how that comes together. But I'm generally optimistic. I think the fundamentals of where we are and the people that we have in key leadership positions is all going to redound to the benefit of the city this year and going forward. But man, like with 5 seats on the council open, basically, there's a lot of uncertainty there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of uncertainty. And we'll see who steps forward. We have a bunch of open seats, and it's still super, super early, right? And some strong candidates have emerged. There's some that are still rumored to emerge, and we'll see what the team is that comes together.
I know one of the issues that you've been frustrated about as far as the pace of it being addressed and implemented is setting up alternatives to policing and unarmed responders that can deal with 911 calls that may not require a commissioned law enforcement officer with a gun. What's kind of the current status? Why is it taking so long? What do you foresee for the year ahead around progress, if any?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that's held it back has been a lot of and I've been very public and open about this, is I think a lot of the phrasing of response alternatives as a general strategy around defund has done considerable damage to the effort in a way that has held back our progress. Because I think it's invited institutional opposition from people who may conceptually support the general idea, but are concerned because they don't want it to come at the expense of
Do you think it was sort of set
traditional law
up
enforcement.
as a zero-sum situation from the outset?
Rhetorically,
Yeah.
right, by some actors. The reality is when you look at some of these cities that have done this, and I think that we've won hearts and minds on this, working with the Harrell administration to work on a framework, because we do have a pilot that's funded that is kind of the framework of what we're going to try to do in this respect and try to get that up and running in 2023. The reality is it's these response alternatives in these other cities work in a dynamic space that's incredibly collaborative with law enforcement. The origin of all these programs is Cahoots in Eugene, Oregon. Mm-hmm. Cahoots got its name, Crisis Assistance Helping Out in the Streets. They chose the acronym Cahoots because they were in cahoots with the police, and that's the etymology of the acronym. As that implies, it's not like they have a hostile or antagonistic posture towards the police. They respond as a response alternative, but they're on the same radio. They're working in the same dynamic space as the police. The police like having them as a resource. It frees the police up to go do other things only they can do.
Right. And
I think it's important to have that reframing. I think we got into a place in the city where this was seen as, there's going to be this completely parallel, screened off response bureaucracy. We don't want them to interact with the police. We don't want them to talk to the police, which couldn't be further from the truth. That's not how these programs work. It's more of a triage system of a bunch of professionals working in a dynamic space where they're in constant communication with each other, and they're just doing what needs to be done to respond to the crisis in the community and to do it in a very practical and non-ideological way, in a way that redounds to the benefit of everyone in the community. I mean, these programs are universally popular in the jurisdictions where they're doing them. The more analogous ones are probably in Denver and Albuquerque, because those big cities, where Eugene, which is a smaller suburb, not quite as analogous, but Denver and Albuquerque, certainly very analogous to our situation in Seattle. And I think that part of it has to start with that reframing, right? To say, look, no, this is in addition to, not instead of police. This is a collaborative effort with law enforcement, not an antagonistic one. And Mayor Harrell, I think, has been helpful in helping us do that reframing. And again, it's a focus on common interest, not positions. Right. I mean, our common interest is to have the appropriate responder respond to the appropriate situation. It's not the positions that some other actors might have in our local politics to fundamentally hobble, undermine, dismantle the police department. Those are separate things. So I do think we're going to make a lot of progress. I think we have alignment with Mayor Harrell, and it's just a matter of continuing to tinker with this until we get to a place where we can do it. And man, when you walk around downtown, you see the clear need to have some kind of additional assistance. And I think we can get there.
And it's interesting that, under your leadership recently leading the Metropolitan Parks District, we've created, 26 positions for park rangers.
Yeah.
An alternative unarmed community ambassador, safety, security, ranger function, however you want to describe it. We'll have 13 or so, 12 or 13 downtown. That seemed like not a big complicated deal. I mean, we've had some rangers in place over the years, so it was a bit more of an expansion than creating something brand new. But is that a model to build from? Does it make it easier to sort of say, hey, we're doing this in parks, and what's the opportunity to just expand that to other areas of the city?
I hope so. I think some of this is just, some of this honestly is getting something going so that we can start trying some different things and seeing how it works.
Yeah.
The Rangers are a perfect example of a response alternative because they're all on, the dispatch radio. They have them. You at DSA, I'm sure you've interacted with Rangers because they've been active downtown for the last couple decades. So, they're all on the radio. They're communicating with other response groups. They're unarmed, so they don't even have lesser lethal weapons, and they're also equipped with basic training to apply, Narcan, for example, or other kinds of public health based services, and in a lot of our open spaces downtown, downtown has a lot of park property where the rangers can be and can provide a visible diplomatic presence to the broader community that shows that the city is looking after our public spaces, that we care.
Some intention.
And I think that it's gonna make a big difference, and I hope we can scale it. Obviously their jurisdiction is limited. They can only be in parks and everything else, but expanding the Ranger program was a very data-driven endeavor. We requested information from the Seattle Police Department about, what is happening in our parks. Mm-hmm. What are the calls for service? And they were by and large things that the Rangers could do, and things that they could check in on. They were generally non-criminal in nature, sort of disorder or civil violation related kinds of things. And currently the Seattle Police is expected to respond to those things, and having these Rangers can potentially free up that police service for other priorities and other projects. And I'm excited to see that roll out and see our new superintendent, AP Diaz, just to give him a plug, and we'll be considering his confirmation sometime this late winter, early spring. It'll be really exciting to see these Rangers out in the community downtown and to get community feedback on their role.
Yeah.
That's going to be important.
Yeah, I agree. I think are going to benefit from that investment in downtown, and then other parts of the city that will have Rangers as well. You spent a lot of time on the issue of homelessness, leading the council's committee responsible for the issue. You've been a big proponent of investments in tiny homes, in hotels that were really critical to getting lots of people off the street during the pandemic and dealing with some very significant encampments downtown in particular. What's your sort of take on the issue today? How collectively as a city community we're dealing with it? Are you encouraged by some recent progress? Are you frustrated? When people kind of out in the community at the cocktail party or the farmer's market, engage you on this issue, what's sort of your thinking, your response from where you sit?
Two big takeaways. So year over year, objectively, it's gotten way better, right? From the height of the pandemic. My God. You know.
That was a low point.
At the height of the pandemic, when we simultaneously had massive encampments in Denny Park, 3rd Avenue, 2nd Avenue Extension, and Pioneer Square, that was dire. That was an unlivable situation for all parties involved. Mm-hmm. And I am so grateful to Lisa Dugard, to Dominic Davis, Chloe Gale for the partnerships. Matthew Allen, who was the Seattle police captain for the West Precinct at that time, the leadership that came together to really move in 2021 to have a wholly universally endorsed humane response and compassion. what actually became the foundation for the Compassion Seattle idea, but Just Care, the group that came together to remediate those encampment locations in a way that got everybody inside and got them into desirable locations. That effort has, in a lot of respects, really held. You walk around downtown today, and we don't really have major encampments. Now, the flip side of that, right, is it's also shown that you can mitigate the encampment situation, but there is disorder that's unrelated to encampments. Like downtown, I would say we still have a high concentration of disorder. No encampments, but there's illicit markets for people to engage in retail theft, and then obviously we have places where fentanyl dealing and consumption is very, very common. So it does really show that you can resolve the encampment situation, but that doesn't necessarily lead to resolving disorder. And I'm hopeful that some of our collaborations, like the We Deliver Care emphasis that we're doing on 3rd Avenue, can start to try to do something to organize and break into these concentrations of disorder that are independent from encampment locations in a de-escalatory way. More broadly, I think that the general public, going back to our right track, wrong track discussion, is generally perceiving that things are improving in relation to homelessness, but again, are dissatisfied with the pace, rightly so, right? I mean, and I do think that part of the problem has been we were supporting a lot of these really, really important interventions through one-time federal money, and that Just Care in particular falls into that category. And it's been really frustrating to be in a position where when the federal money left, we sort of brought those programs down from a boil to a simmer, and the result has been, we haven't been able to keep going on the progress that was making. And I think that formula of these low barrier to entry hotels really was the thing that was firing on all cylinders. There's going to be some data release soon. I can't say more, but there's going to be sort of the final report back on Just Care, and the results are stunningly positive, especially when Just Care was able to team up with the King County Regional Homelessness Authority to get voucher-supported placements to do pass-through for people through the hotels. That data is going to come out soon, and I mean, just to plug here, I just cannot fathom how we won't be able to fund continuing that program based on the results that we saw from that partnership. So I think, again, this sort of goes back to something I said at the beginning of our time together. That, we know what to do. It's a matter of figuring out the plan to actually do it, and that's been the frustrating part. Yeah. But it's something I'm signing up to keep trying on for 4 more years. But it's and candidly, I don't know if I would be doing it if I was in a position where I was more like, oh my God, what are we possibly going to do about this? Like, I think we know, and it's a matter of coming up with the plan to implement rather than the whiteboard of like, well, now how are we going to do this? Yeah. Like we know how. It's a matter of implementing.
Yeah, and I would agree. I mean, those programs, the investments that you help deliver, and then the collaboration between law enforcement, but also all those social service leaders you mentioned, made a huge difference downtown for the neighborhood, but also a lot of people living in those awful places. So we're in a much better spot because of it. Your district boundaries change a little bit with the new maps and redistricting. Does it change how you think about your next term or this campaign? Or do you think the set of issues and the neighborhoods you're going to continue to represent are, not going to be all that different?
Yeah, I mean, it's a district boundary where downtown definitely swings a bigger bat in the overall profile and makeup of District 7. There is still, despite that dividing line on 28th and Magnolia, there is still a significant portion of Magnolia that's in District 7. Those issues are still going to be important. I still fully intend for my office to have representation at Magnolia Community Council meetings. I'm going to work closely together with the District 6 council member on issues that affect and relate Magnolia. So in that respect, it's not going to change at all. But I do think, especially as we go forward, thinking about not just where we are now, but the character of the district over the next 10 years, downtown's going to come back in a big way. There's going to be a lot more people moving into those downtown portions of the district. And downtown is certainly going to be a really critical focus. And candidly, more broadly, like you go up to Magnolia and talk to folks up there. They care greatly about the recovery of the downtown neighborhood. And I think there's more of an issue synergy than people tend to acknowledge. And I was watching mostly as a passive observer in the redistricting discussion, because we don't really have a say as the council over it. We have a commission that does it. And I don't think that the media narrative really was capturing that very accurately. That people in Magnolia care about public safety too.
Yeah.
And people in Magnolia want a downtown that they can be proud of, they can visit, they can work in. And every poll we do indicates there's broad support for bringing downtown back across the whole city. So,
yeah, I like that issue synergy. I think you're right. Yeah, there's a lot of it across our city. You see it in every poll and other types of research. So we conclude our podcast with the question of, what is your perfect Saturday in Seattle? What's your itinerary, if you can, from morning till evening, have complete say over it, which I know you may not right now with a newborn at home, but but what's the itinerary for you?
Well, I could tell you what I did last Saturday. So I came downtown, of course, and I did. I'm not telling a fib here. No, I come downtown all the time. I love coming downtown.
Of the urban core.
But came downtown, and unfortunately, on a Saturday, it's not reliable that I can go to the 4th Avenue monorail, but I like to patronize the 4th Avenue monorail coffee. It's one of their newest locations.
Yeah,
and
it's
it's
a great
one.
I love that
Well,
spot.
it's a great one. It's in the middle of the
guy.
block, unfortunately, so they don't get as much business. But they weren't open, so I instead went to Pike Place Market. I got my half a dozen donuts from the little donut stand. Spent some time in Pike Place Market, went to Market Spice. I drink green tea like a fiend, so I bought like 5 new things of green tea from Market Spice. And then I just walked around downtown and ran some errands. There's the great, you ever go to, is it Proton 10 at Pacific Place? Have you been there yet?
I don't think I have.
Oh my God. Yeah, you got to go to this place and get your staples, like your workout clothes.
Okay.
I do a lot of, I go to the gym a lot, and this is the new. It's a Seattle company. It's a spin-off.
This is your brand, huh?
Spin-off from Amazon. This is my I can do this here. I'm not on the city's dime right now. I can endorse a brand, but owned by people who live downtown. First storefront in downtown in the bottom of Pacific Place. Highly recommended. They sell like general workout staples, so like V-neck T-shirts, sweatpants, hoodies. So I went there, loaded up again on my on some of my workout staples. And then actually went to GameWorks to check in on how they're doing. Like a lot of folks don't know that GameWorks is back downtown, so strongly encourage people. Like we're definitely doing all of
Did you
Vivian's.
grow up going to GameWorks?
I did, and boy, Vivian will too now. Mark my words. We're doing all those birthday parties at GameWorks downtown. But went in there to check in on how they're doing, and it was nice to see them busy on a Saturday afternoon. So, the downtown is a great place to have those experiences, and I love taking full advantage of it. And, I think that the best Saturday is when you're out there hanging out with your friend. I'm a very pro-social person, so like my Saturdays are not kind of the quiet book at home with tea, but being out downtown, doing things with your friends, hanging out. And what we could really actually use is more like microbreweries downtown, like light industrial storefront uses. That is something that's lacking. So another plug that I'm sending out there, if you're an aspiring startup microbrewery, there's plenty of them in Ballard. Don't open one in Ballard, open it downtown. Open it downtown. We need some neighborhood microbreweries here.
Amen. Yeah, I agree. Well, that sounds like a delightful Saturday. And I like a lot of those things. Well, thank you, Councilmember, for coming on our podcast. Congratulations on what you're doing with yours. And thanks for all your leadership on some tough issues facing the neighborhood here, but also our city, and for your public service and for your service over the last number of years, and for stepping up again to put yourself out there in this campaign season and to run for re-election. So we appreciate you and all you're doing, and the partnership and your accessibility to us and other constituents in your district.
Yeah, thank you, John. Looking forward to more collaboration.
Well, hope you enjoyed my conversation with Councilmember Lewis. Thanks to him for joining us. And if you want to learn more about Councilmember Lewis's campaign for re-election, you can go to lewisforseattle.com and also find out a lot more of what he's been working on his official City of Seattle webpage, seattle.gov/council/Lewis. And be sure to check out his podcast as well, All Policy is Local. Wherever you find your podcast, I assume it's there. But he's been doing a great job with that, launched it end of last year and has had some great guests, taking a deep dive on a range of complicated policy issues facing our community. So congrats to him on that. And thanks again to him for joining us. As I do each and every episode, I want to close out with a recommendation of what you just can't miss in downtown Seattle, something that's new or reopened. In this case, it's something that's coming, and it's in case you missed it. And in case you missed the scoop that Tan Vinh, the food writer for the Seattle Times, had last week, which definitely caught my eye, but the famed cocktail bar, Death and Company, which started in New York City in 2007, is going to be opening a location somewhere in Seattle in the next year or so. Founder and CEO David Kaplan has made a home with his family now here on the east side of Seattle over in Bellevue. And they recently announced that they are going to be expanding into the Seattle market. Their sights are set on Capitol Hill, looking for an 85 to 120 seat bar space. This bar first started in New York City. They've opened in Denver and LA, and they really helped usher in the craft cocktail movement in our country and do an incredible job. They also produce what I think is one of the best cocktail books around, both for techniques and recipes, sort of your one-stop shop there. So check out their book online and keep your eyes open for their new, what I assume is going to be a very cozy spot somewhere in the greater downtown, fingers crossed, sometime in the next year. So Death and Company coming to Seattle. Great news and a great scoop by Tan Vinh, the Seattle Times food writer, last week. So wanted to flag that in case you missed it. I want to thank you for joining us on this episode of Seattle City Makers, presented by the Downtown Seattle Association, with support from James Cito and production by Spark Creative.